is a long arc for a series. So I need a little video where we have the highlights of the past messages. I've been offering a teaching on the 5 life-transforming lessons from Paramahansa Yogananda. And of course, I'm really happy to have Phil Goldberg here with us today with his new book on the life of Yogananda, which is a profound book. And it picks up where the autobiography of a yogi left off, telling us about his life here in the West and what it was like for him as a sage, as a spiritual giant, dealing with many of the human challenges that are also there. So I think you'll enjoy hearing from Phil at Satsang this afternoon, and he'll do a little short mini workshop at that time. So thanks for being with us, Phil. I look forward to that time. So over this arc of months, I've been offering these life-transforming lessons from Paramahansa Yogananda, the ways in which I have learned these lessons from his life. Of course, from my own teacher, Roy Eugene Davis, who is one of his direct disciples, but also simply from reading his teachings and observing his life. So the first message was, be intentional. And when you look at how he came from India to the West and the journey that he made at such a young age, how he stood firm in his intention to bring the teachings, you can see what intentionality will do. And along with that intentionality, he showed that, you know, once we know what our dharma is, once we know what our life purpose is, and we set out to express that, along the way, besides being clear about what is ours to do, we have to stay open. We have to see how it is that life presents us with opportunities to unfold that divine potential. So it's not enough for us just to go charging into the world. It's good to be clear. It's good to be purposeful. But in order to cooperate with the infinite, in order to experience the support of divine grace, which is omnipresent, we have to stay open to it. So his life certainly demonstrated that, and he taught it to us as we came here, you know, being open to what could be possible for this community. This is a wild community. I don't know if you know that. And what I mean by that is we have this gathering of people here from all backgrounds, from different religious backgrounds, different ethnicities, different parts of the world, different ideas about God. That's wild. But they're here because here in the silence we meet in the mystical one heart of God, in the silence. And no one can argue there. So here we have a fulfillment of Paramahansaji's vision that yoga would make its way to the West and would see to harmonizing people, would bring people from all different backgrounds and religions together. So here we are as a wild expression of that vision. And he offered the teaching with his life that it is necessary in order to do what we're here to do, to be happy and to be able to share your joy with others. There's no sense in being morose on the spiritual path. So what we learn, not so much as to be jovial all the time, because life has its sorrows, but we learn how to be content with life itself. And out of that, as the Yoga Sutras tell us, and one of the promises, out of that, learning how to be content, how to understand deeply what life is about, and to be content with that, out of that comes supreme happiness, happiness that no one can take from us. So today I'm on the fourth aim, and it turns out to be such a wonderful aim for Mother's Day. The fourth goal, the fourth transforming lesson is make love your aim. And I see the arc of Paramahansa Yogananda's life as an unfolding revelation of divine love. When you read the autobiography of a yogi, you see into the heart of a devotee, and you see his striving to come to know God. But one of the first things that breaks his heart, is the death of his mother when he was 11 years old. And he is absolutely bereft without this one who was for him his support, his solace, and the manifestation of love in his life. And he writes that he literally stormed the gates of heaven with his despair following her death and that loss. And at some point, he had a vision of Divine Mother coming to him, God in the form of the Divine Feminine, telling him that it was her, it was the Divine who has always been with him. And that was the one supporting him through his earthly mother and through many lifetimes. So this sorrow, this passage of his earthly mother that broke his heart, became the opening to expanding his heart to knowing the Divine Mother. And the Divine Mother, of course, was his constant companion through all his journey. I have discovered, here's how I think of it. Life has 1,000 ways to break our hearts, and one way to heal them. And that breaking of the heart that we experience, and we experience it through sometimes the beauty and the awesome nature of life, and sometimes through its sorrows. But the breaking of our hearts is the opening of our awareness to understand the truth of who we are, what this life is. And that is the one medicine for our broken heart, is coming to know the truth that will sustain us. So we see in Paramahansa Yogananda's life this beginning as a young child with a broken heart, coming to see a greater vision beyond loss of what actually sustains us in life and life's true purpose. And then he concludes his autobiography by saying, God is love. God's plan for creation can be rooted only in love. So, why should we make love our aim? I mean, I'm talking about an aim like every day we get up and we're about love. That's what we agree to. Why should we do that if life is only going to break our heart again and again? We should do that because love is what we really want. So in order to experience that which we really want beyond all other things, we must make it our aim. And when I speak of love this way, and I believe that when Paramahansaji was speaking of God as love, we're not talking about human person or human love. We're talking about the omnipresent reality of that which is supportive of everyone and everything, and nothing is left out of the reality of God. This love is the wholeness of God. It's the unconditional beingness to which everyone belongs. And everyone wants to return, and everyone wants to experience that sense of belonging. That's what heals us from our sorrow. So this idea of God as love refers to this omnipresent reality that is supportive of our awakening. And sometimes our awakening often comes through the breaking of the heart. And that helps us reach beyond the confines of the small self. Now for me, and on Mother's Day it's a good time to tell you this story, I remember this profound breaking of my heart when I became a mother. I was only 19 years old when I had my first child. I was a child myself. I was clueless. And I had this gave birth to this beautiful baby girl, and she had blonde hair. She just, usually babies have dark hair, no matter if it's going to be light. But she came out with this light, luminous being. And I remember holding her and feeling this awesome responsibility for this tiny life. She was so tiny. And I wanted her to be safe. I wanted her to thrive. I wanted her to be nurtured. I wanted her to be healthy. I wanted all good things for her. That was very natural. And then I remember what broke my heart is I was holding her. Here I am, only 19, very just scared kid. And I had a vision. I had a felt sense all of a sudden of all of the other mothers all over the world. I felt this oneness with mothers. I had been initiated into motherhood by this little girl, and I felt this connection to mothers everywhere. And then came the thought, here I am in the West. We certainly weren't rich, but I had the resources to feed my child. I had the resources to take her to the doctor if she was sick. And what came into my thought was what it was like for a mother somewhere who did not have those resources, who had that same love for that same little child that she was holding in her arms, but she didn't have those resources. And all of a sudden my heart was broken, was absolutely broken. And that pushed me on a trajectory of my life. It planted a seed in me, a determination to work for the well-being of children and mothers everywhere. And my first step, when my daughter got big enough that I could move out of the house, my first step was I went to work for UNICEF. And so that vision that broke my heart began to expand my capacity as a human being. So sometimes something that is very joyful will break our heart, but still the intention of life, I believe, is the same, to get us out of our self-concern and to take us into life as an instrument of divine possibility. And of course, sometimes our hearts are broken by sorrows, very often, and by loss. I have a sweet story that my husband allows me to share with you. Many years ago, when he was a young man, he was very romantic. He's still pretty romantic, which is great. But at that time, romance, but not wisdom. So he was one of those young men who just had his heart broken, many times. And at this point in his life, he had a guru, and Baba Haridas. And the love of his life had left him. And he came crying, weeping, and he said, "How many times do I have to go through this?" And the Guru's response was, "If you are wise, only once." Paramahansa Yogananda taught that we can discover divine love by widening the circle of our love, learning to see and serve God in all. This is what he wrote. Those who love God and who cannot be bribed by anything else are leaders destined to take mankind out of the chaos of sorrow into the light of freedom and happiness. You should first serve your family, then your friends, then your country, then the world. The light of God is evenly distributed to all, though not all reflected equally. Learn to see God in all persons of whatever race or religion. When you feel that you are part of a united world, giving love and service to all as Christ did, then you will feel cosmic love, which is God. I think in our journey of making love our aim, you know, when you have an aim, I like to think of it this way. If you're like an archer, you have an aim with your arrow. The arrow has already hit the mark in your mind. Isn't that so? That is already with you. That trajectory is already with you in your mind. So when we make love our aim and we begin our day, we have already begun to occupy love, to embrace that goal of how we will live that day. And then this is what happens. We go out into the world and life teaches us about love. Life teaches us about love. And if we're willing, we learn. And I think our own trajectory of hitting that mark of love takes us through a change in our life. You know, in our immaturity, we look to get love. We all want to get love, right? We want somebody, hey, how does that work? Not so great, right? Have you ever felt like you just wanted somebody to love you? Will they? No. So that's a lesson we learn, and we move from wanting to get love then to giving love. And that's a step up. But it's not the ultimate step. That ultimate step I see is being love itself, which is this divine love is a love that is free from desire of either getting or giving. Is being love itself, doing whatever love would do. So let us make love our aim. And I thought I would conclude by reading to you. I wrote a little adaptation of 1 Corinthians chapter 13. You know that one? Love is patient and waits with awareness. Love is patient and waits with awareness. It is kind and at peace with itself. It does not recognize a separate self. Therefore, envy does not exist in love, nor pride, nor acting out, or self-seeking. Love cannot be angered. It sees through the illusion of evil, fights no battles, and celebrates the truth of life. Love is awake. Love rejects nothing and holds all possibility within it. Love is the compassionate awareness that returns us to the eternal source. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. Om Shanti.